Right, welcome. Today we have a very unique guest with us. I have with me Divya Khanna, who's an alumni of IIM Bangalore. She's worked for 20 years in the advertising industry with two of the largest advertising corporates that are there in the space. And what she specializes in is observing and analyzing human lives and behavior, and she develops insights and ideas that help build brands. So, an extremely interesting guest with us, very unique. What she's done is she's written this very interesting book called The Company We Keep. And this is largely on managing perceptions as well as how companies, which is employers and employees, really have to mix together to create a solid work environment, and what really drives companies, whether from an employer standpoint or from an employee standpoint. So, extremely interesting. I have gone through the book, but ma'am, if I can ask you and I can get straight to it, talk to us about what you have tried to cover, or what you have sought to achieve when you have written this book. What is the objective, and who should the audience be? Who does it really cater to?
Okay. So, firstly, my objective was actually a very personal objective because when I started work on this, I was actually in the very, I guess this happens to a lot of people, but I was in that mid-level burnout kind of phase of my career and my life. And at that point, I started questioning, what I had done wrong because I thought at the beginning of my career, whatever I wanted, I had achieved, but I didn't seem completely happy with it. My work-life balance was actually not a balance at all, and so I really wanted answers for myself. And being somebody who was studying consumer behavior and research, I felt research was a very useful tool for me to figure out and learn for myself. The idea of a book was really to, kind of develop my writing skills. I always wanted to kind of write, and also, to kind of put together whatever research I do, to kind of put together it in some sort of useful form where other people can also consume it. I think this is a book which anybody who is interested in the corporate world or is in the corporate world can read. It's not full of jargon or anything like that. This is very from a personal story, individual kind of point of view from different stages of careers. And it's really to just show a mirror to what is the work culture today, because when the kind of burnout I had, and when a lot of people go through it, we tend to say, oh, the culture is toxic, oh, this company, that company, this industry, that industry. But the truth is that culture is really made up of the people who are in it, and we influence and move culture slowly
Right.
through our individual decisions. And so we also need to take little accountability and responsibility. And that was really my objective, that if I don't like the culture, if other people also don't like the culture, what can we do about it? And if we know where we are coming from, maybe we can kind of make a few changes that would be beneficial to us long term. So that was really why I started this book and the intention behind it. I would like people to use it to introspect and decide for themselves. I don't think I can give anybody a kind of a solution, unfortunately. But it's good if we all think for ourselves and we are a
Right.
little bit more informed and deliberate in our choices.
So let me start this discussion off by asking you, what should an employee look for from an MNC perspective and from a startup perspective? Of course, the MNC provides a more broader level experience, whereas a startup provides a variety of experience, a vast variety, as well as a good set of leadership qualities start to build into the employee. So how should an employee look at it? And from an employer standpoint, right, startups are more volatile, so people are more reluctant to join startups. So what kind of employees should look to join startups? What mentality should you have, and what kind of a pitch should startups make versus MNCs when they try and hire?
Okay, so I think it's not just MNC versus startup. It's also the kind of business, the kind of function that you're in, and what is the stage of the business. So startups also are at various stages of growth, and so it depends. For example, freshers who are just coming into the business environment, who are just starting their first jobs. For them, learning is a very important thing. So it depends on what kind of learning are they going to get. What are the opportunities available to them. Now MNCs tend to have very well developed training programs. So if you're in a kind of a very well established function, say like a sales or a marketing, then maybe an MNC might be a good thing, especially if you want exposure to other countries and other cultures. With startups, what happens is there's a lot of ambiguity and uncertainty. So, if you have a high degree of, um, uh, you know, uh, suppose you're attracted to informality in working structures, MNCs tend to be formal. The larger the organization, the more formal it becomes. So it also depends on, what is your style and your personality and what you want to work with. It also depends on your stage of life, right? What are you looking for? Now, there's this common thing that, and during my research, a lot of people brought it up that, to work for a well established large company, which is in many countries, means there is a certain stability and growth which is assured. Unfortunately, in today's business environment, with all the layoffs that are happening, we can't say that either, right? So, stability is something that is going. And so I think, everybody needs to be ready for what it is that they are looking for at that stage of their life and their career. When it's a large established company, you tend to have a little bit more work life balance. In a startup, you don't tend to have that, because in a startup, there's tremendous pressure. The business objectives tend to be very, very, out of reach. And I have a few friends who've been working for startups, and I can see from their experiences that the pressure just gets even crazier. And pressure in any sense in any corporate job is there. It's something that is very much a part of our experience and our culture.
Right. And let me take that, just the one point that you've made from that is that it depends on what you want to do in the future. Now, with regard to how AI is coming through, with regard to the way, at least I've used ChatGPT, and it's quite fascinating the way AI is able to respond very uniquely to every question that we're putting across. So, what kind of a job skill, a job profile, or what are those qualities and traits that one must look for in a job today to make sure that 10 years from now you're not redundant?
I think, see, one of the things that I have seen coming across, which maybe contributes to the intense pressure in the environment, is that we are very focused on quantitative deliverables. I think the qualitative is where human beings, really have a strength. And I don't know when and if AI will be able to catch up with that. So, skills like interpersonal skills, creativity, if chatbots and AI are already, in fact, in use. One of the sectors I would like to use as an example is the banking sector. I am not a very tech savvy person, but neither am I somebody who's uncomfortable with technology. And yet I find, using banking apps and all a little difficult. Now, people who are uncomfortable, and a lot of us would be helping our parents and, older people kind of, use it, the very measures that they've used to protect our privacy and to make sure that, that our funds are not misused are the measures that actually interfere with the user experience. So many people, including me and including people who are more technologically savvy than me, will say, I just wish I could talk to a human being. I've even had the experience where I've gone to a bank because I couldn't understand the automated call system. And the bank employee told me that I'd love to help you, but we are not authorized to do this. Only that AI chatbot, whatever they have on the call center, is able to do this. So they've had to figure it out for me and do it for me because I just couldn't figure it out myself. So the thing is that while AI is developing and we should definitely use it wherever we can, we should also remember that at the end of the day we are human beings and we want human interactions. We want personalization and customization, and we want somebody to answer our specific questions without giving us a whole encyclopedia of irrelevant information. Like even FAQs, sometimes the FAQs don't answer your query. So then if you don't have a number to call or some live person to chat with, you're lost. So yes, I think technology is a great tool, but we have to remember it has its limitations, and therefore we need to develop our skills in terms of creativity, innovation, the things where we see AI as not being able to go as yet.
Well, yes, so true, right? These days with some of the e-commerce websites using more of the IVR rather than
Right,
using real people, it's proven to
right,
be. I have faced, despite being almost born in the 1990s, I have faced a bit of a
right,
challenge in terms of my interactions. So I can completely understand that relationships is what I understand is the key or holds the fundamental with regard to the future. At least that's a guarantee. But moving
right.
quickly on, I'll shift tack. You, in your book, you've spoken about hard work versus smart work, and you've also spoken about smart work versus jugaad. right? Now, in the
Mm.
Indian context, perceptions
Mm.
largely drive the way in which workplace, your bonuses, your salaries, your
Yes.
increments, your promotions are largely driven by perceptions. Now, in that
Yes.
kind of an environment, how should one balance between hard work and smart work?
So I think I think one is that we need to learn to, kind of maybe upgrade our perceptions a little bit. In the Indian context, we feel, hard work and sacrifice is very, very important, So, you will have cases where people are sending emails in the middle of the night. And instead of feeling that, oh, I might be disturbing the other person, it's like, see, they're seeing how committed I am, And then we end up competing on that kind of a basis, which is very unhealthy and probably unproductive as well. Because I have seen, especially as I grow older, that, at a certain point in the night, my brain just shuts off, So any ideas and any work that I manage to do at that point may not be very good when I look at it in the light of morning, but I kind of, stretched myself to do it only because I felt that is something that I need to do. So I think we need to kind of adjust our expectations and perceptions of hard work versus smart work. Also, the thing is, jugaad comes in as a, when there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of urgency and you need to quickly do something, that is when you can, you say, okay, let me just find a, like a, something that will just kind of hold the solution for now, like a smart solution that is not long term, it's just for the short term, and for the short term you can do all those things and you can make it work, but in the long term those same things will come falling down, and I think a lot of if you study the business, famous businesses that have kind of faltered at some point, it's because they've taken maybe the concept of jugaad too far, like you say that, oh, I promised something as an entrepreneur that I'm going to develop as an answer to a consumer problem, and until it's fully developed, I'm just making that promise again and again. But now I'm so used to making that promise that even when I'm not close to achieving it, I cannot go back and say that, oh, I haven't achieved it yet, because I've been promising it for so long. So whether it's going to Mars, or whether it is getting all your tests and diagnosis done with one drop of blood, these are all fantastic ideas and probably will help and contribute to humanity. But are we realistic about where we are in terms of achieving that? So I think we need to find that balance, and we need to encourage people to feel safe, because sometimes smart work is a solution, sometimes jugaad is a solution, and sometimes it is hard work. This whole thing, there's no blanket one way of doing it, when you're, and especially when you're young, yes, hard work does help because you need certain amount of practice to kind of develop an expertise, but as you grow older you need to be smarter and sharper and kind of try and see the big picture rather than the small details. And then we're working in these large teams, so who is going to do the hard work, who is going to do the smart work, that should be transparently discussed, because a lot of times you will find especially junior team members will be complaining, I do all the work and this person is doing nothing. That person may be doing something, it's just that we don't know what they're doing, right? So we don't really understand. All we understand is that as you become more senior in the hierarchy, you have the leeway to kind of say, I'm thinking, I'm reflecting, I'm strategizing. And at the lower levels you don't really understand what that is. They may be doing something, and it's very easy, from your perception, you're feeling like a victim or you're feeling put upon, so you kind of misinterpret what the other person is doing or not doing.
Right. Right. And also, can I have your view on work-life balance? Right. This is something that I worked in an MNC, and this is something that gets thrown around very, very
Mm.
conveniently as well, and also, it also gets taken out of context sometimes. So it's actually worked both ways in my experience. Now, with regard to work life balance, in your book you've given a very interesting example of where a London based employee
Mm.
was told, or was asked by his mid level manager on an update on some work that he was doing
Mm.
on a Saturday,
Mm.
and later on
Yes.
the employer had to step in, or the company had to step in and request him to apologize and give a written apology to his
Mm.
junior for
Yes.
overstepping a line on a Saturday. So where do
Yes.
we draw this line? Because in India we don't see this at all. So two
Yes.
questions here. One is, where should
Mm.
we draw this line? And second is, do you ever think that this kind of a behavior or respect for employees will come to India at some point of time in the future?
So I think, when you talk about work life, the key word is balance. And that is the word that, we don't really know how to do. And I know from my own experience that I go from one extreme to the other extreme very easily, but to find a place in the middle is what, I think till date I'm still struggling with. How do I find, like, you say I want to work 8 hours a day, or I want to work 4 hours a day, or I want to work 16 hours a day. What is the right balance? And that also differs from the stage of life. When you're young and you're full of energy and all your friends are busy with work and you don't have much of a social life, at that point you're probably happy to throw yourself into work and learn something new. You're excited by that phase. But later on, as your responsibilities increase, as your health starts suffering, as you want more, and you start questioning, why am I doing this, and what am I getting out of it? So I think we need to kind of understand, that we are, what are our definitions of success? And I have a chapter in my book which is written by a psychotherapist that I consulted, Kalyani Kapoor, and she has put it very beautifully. She says, how do you define success? Is success only about numbers? Is it only about achievements? Or is it also about, meaningful relationships? Is it about, having health and all of that? So you have to, the key thing is you have to find a balance. And then the other thing you have to recognize is the balance is different for everybody else. And the balance is even different for you at different points in your life. So it's not like, oh, I found my balance, I'm going to sit over here. It's not a fairy tale where you find this and you're happily ever after. It's not like that, unfortunately. I wish it was, but it's not. So at every day, every stage, I have to keep telling myself, okay, what am I falling back on? So one day there may be an urgency at work and I may put in more hours there. The next day I might take a little time of work to kind of do a little exercise or meet a friend. So I think the big issue is that we trust ourselves, and as employees, we want that flexibility to decide for ourselves. We want a little autonomy. This is my time. How do I spend it? Because some people like to wake up early and work, but not everybody is awake at 7 a.m. to read emails. And there are some people who like to work late in the night, and there are some people who are very productive in the afternoon. Everybody has a different kind of cycle. And unfortunately, the way work is structured right now, it's very much like a school environment where there are these set hours, and there's this hour to this hour this meeting, and then these 20 people have to be in this meeting no matter what other demands they have on their time. And we've all been there, where these huge large meetings where most people are on their laptops ignoring what is actually happening in the meeting because they are worried about some other urgent work that they are falling behind on. So the thing is, as an employer, and this work from home has brought it forward very beautifully in my opinion, that as an employee, I want to use work of home to give myself a little flexibility, because if I take a 10-minute nap in the afternoon after lunch, I might just feel more productive later on. Whereas as an employer, I am actually constantly monitoring and saying, I hope people are not goofing off. I hope that the hours that they're supposed to work, they're actually working. And the end of the day, what matters in businesses is outcomes. So this is where the hard work conundrum comes in. And I have faced this myself personally. You feel you worked weekends and nights and everything, but at the end of the day, you're not evaluated for how much hard work you put in. You're evaluated for what outcomes you achieved. And chances are, when you stretch yourself that thin, your outcomes are not very good. So what have you actually achieved? And I think businesses need to realize that also. If do I want my employees to show that they are committed to the organization and work 10 hours every day, or do I want them to achieve a certain thing by the end of the week and I don't care how they do it? Now both are extremes. Where is that balance? We have to find that balance individually as well as collectively. And it is not an easy thing to do. Let me just say that right up front. It is not easy to do. So we all need to kind of start thinking about it and start accepting that this is difficult, and that we have to help ourselves and help each other to kind of achieve it.
Right. And Divya, if I can, try and bring in some piece of, when we interact with investors, when we interact with corporate leaders, there is a bit of a distinction when we hear them and listen to them. The investors, or rather one school of investors, have a theory which says that every human being, essentially what he is working for is eventually to achieve freedom of time. But somewhere along the way, the peer pressure is what keeps us in the rat race, and then it takes us all the way through to into our 50s, by which it's very late to make a change. And then health issues take up center stage, and then the like, right? That's how at least a lot of investors like to preach and like to spin it. That's one school of thought. Do you also believe, because you're not from that investment community, but do you, as a psychologist, based on your interactions, studying people's psyche, not exactly a psychologist, but studying people's psyche. Would you also believe that that is the correct school of thought? A majority of us are actually looking for just freedom of time and in the bargain entering the rat race. Is that what it is?
So, like you said, I'm not a psychologist, so I can't speak with too much authority on this. In my view, and this is an evolving view, I feel that, human beings need a different thing. So again, going back to the term of balance, this is what I've learned from Kalyani Kapoor, that, we need a certain amount of work. We need to feel productive. We need to feel needed. We need to feel that sense of accomplishment. And we need that achievement to kind of feel good about ourselves. If you are not doing too much, and a lot of people will say this, is that, that leads to a lot of existential angst. Why am I here? What is the meaning of my life? What is my purpose? Am I useful or not to this world or to my family or to whoever? So you can't, I think we need everything, but what is the balance? Is it at certain points you want time? I think, the mid career is actually I feel that is the most pressured part of the corporate life cycle right now, because at that point is when there are multiple responsibilities which are competing for your time. And it's not necessarily responsibility in the sense of something that, oh my God, it's, weighing me down, but something that I've happily decided and I want to do, and I get a lot of joy out of it. So for example, like parenting, or looking after your own parents as they grow older, or enjoying time with your partner, so there are a lot of other things that you want to do, or looking after your health. And like we discussed, mid career and midlife is also when the health problems start creeping up. And these days, what I have seen with, again, my limited experience, a lot of the health problems that are cropping up are actually conditions. They are not really diseases that, you get it one day and then you take antibiotics and then you're fine. It is more of, things that need to be managed over time through lifestyle changes. So, whether it is kind of cholesterol or blood pressure or diabetes, or, a lot of chronic autoimmune diseases are cropping up. So, then it goes back to the balance in life. If I can't manage my diet and I can't manage my exercise, I can't manage my sleep, I am not going to be a very productive person at work. Yet at the same time, I also want to productively use my time. I want to feel useful, whether to my family, whether it is by being at home and, spending time with my loved ones, or whether it is being in office and contributing to something else. I need to feel useful. So it is a combination of everything. And we need to, allow for the fact that, people will have different definitions.
Right, point taken. I'll quickly move on and I'll shift focus now onto leadership, right? Because more often than not, we've always heard that the climate or an environment in an organization is determined top down. So largely, if the leadership has a certain manner of working, that is typically percolated through the organization. And any change to that is largely regarded in a slightly hostile manner. So how should leaders embrace this change? Because everyone is different, and with each passing generation, the difference is really increasing every single time we see the next generation come through. So how should leaders address this as a situation and as a problem? And what changes should they make in terms of their expectations?
So again, I can't speak very definitively, but I also had an HR expert who's written a chapter in my book called Mr. R.R. Nair. And, from what I understand and what his point of view is, that a lot of leadership training and development is required. A lot of coaching and mentoring is required in that phase, because one is every time you make a transition in your life and in your career, you need to kind of be able to understand what needs to change and what needs to stay the same. That is one part of, the hand holding that you need. The second part is that, what do you feel as an employee, as somebody, because leaders are also employees of the organization at the end of the day. So you are an employee as well as you're a leader. So how do you manage those two perspectives? And what I found is, because of our status consciousness in society, as we move higher and higher up the hierarchy, lower in the hierarchy, you're constantly questioning yourself. You're constantly wondering, am I doing a good job? Am I on the right track? Should I change this? Should I change that? As you start getting that respect and you start moving up the ladder, you tend to stop doing that, because you feel that, now that you've achieved a certain level of success, it's a validation of, whatever you're doing, and whatever you're doing is right. and it may or may not be the case. Like Kalyani Kapoor says, a lot of personal insecurity is what creeps into the leadership style, and when that happens is when kind of things in the organization will turn topsy turvy. R.R. Nair also talks about how there was an old, so we are kind of in a transition right now. India is now becoming more and more democratic. So we see less of so the while we are still very status and class conscious, that is starting to dilute, and we need to recognize the fact that it's diluting, and we need to mirror that in our companies and organizations as well. So democratization means that we feel more able to assert ourselves, more able to question people who might be higher up than us in the hierarchy. And so how do people who are used to command and control kind of a thing, who've grown up in that environment and now are in leadership positions where they have subordinates who are openly questioning the authority, which they never did to their own bosses. So it is I feel a lot of leadership training, mentoring, coaching is required, and also a lot of upskilling. Like I think introspection is something which I would recommend to every person on an individual level, whether they are leaders or they are employees, that use the data in my book, use the data that you have from your friends, and the other experiences and other exposures that you have, use it to introspect for yourself and see where your balance lies, because in every situation your response can be a little different. It doesn't have to be, we are all looking for an easy way out. Unfortunately, if there was just one way to behave and I could kind of, program myself to do it, that would be great. But unfortunately, that's not. And that is where our problem with hard work versus smart work also comes in. Because, and I faced that myself. I was used to doing hard work, and when smart work was called for, I really didn't know how to make that adjustment. I don't think I did it very well.
Right. Right. So it's been excellent chatting with you. It's been extremely insightful reading your book, Divya, and thank you so much for taking out time and chatting with us. Of course, it's been great perspective, but I would encourage each of our viewers to do go through the book, because I think some of those answers are so subjective, as Divya did mention, and you may get perspective for yourself by reading this book. And I'm sure that a lot of our viewers will go through it, because it was extremely insightful for me as well. But on that note, thank you so much, Divya, for speaking with us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Harsh. Your questions were really interesting, and I hope that I was able to answer some of them.
No, no, absolutely. It's been a pleasure, Divya. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Harsh.
Thank you, ma'am. I will stay
Thank
in
you,
touch,
Harsh.
of course.
Sure, of course.
It was great perspective.
Yeah. And I would love to, if you have any more feedback or anything for me, I would love to hear it. And if you have the opportunity, I would love
Ye-
it if you could put a review on Amazon.
yeah, yeah, of course I will. Of course I will. So I will do that. And yeah, I mean, on feedback, why don't we chat? Maybe I
Sure.
can get some feedback from you, or rather insights from you. Because
Sure.
everything I wasn't able to cover in this interview, of course,
Yes.
but some of your
Yes, I
insights
would love to
offhand
chat.
will really help, because because yeah, because when I was reading it, I could relate to a lot of the things that I was reading about, and it was extremely helpful even for me to introspect and think about
Glad to
what
hear
I
it.
really wanted, and what I experienced. So yeah, but thank you so much. Thank you for doing this. It's been great fun.
Thank you so much, Harsh. Thank you.